I'm going to read this morning from Genesis chapter 21, verses 1 through 21. Let us hear the word of the Lord. Then the Lord took note of Sarah as he had said, and the Lord did for Sarah as he had promised. So Sarah conceived and bore a son to Abraham in his old age, at the appointed time of which God had spoken to him. Abraham called the name of his son who was born to him, whom Sarah bore to him, Isaac. Then Abraham circumcised his son Isaac when he was 8 days old, as God had commanded him. Now Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born to him. Sarah said, God has made laughter for me. Everyone who hears will laugh with me. And she said, who would have said to Abraham that Sarah would nurse children? Yet I have borne him a son in his old age. The child grew and was weaned, and Abraham made a great feast on that day Isaac was weaned. Now Sarah saw the son of Hagar, the Egyptian, whom she had borne to Abraham, mocking. Therefore she said to Abraham, drive out this maid and her son. For the son of this maid shall not be an heir with my son Isaac. The matter distressed Abraham greatly because of his son. But God said to him, Abraham, do not be distressed because of the lad and your maid. Whatever Sarah tells you, listen to her. For through Isaac your descendants shall be named. And of the son of the maid I will make a nation also, because he is your descendant. So Abraham rose early in the morning and took bread and a skin of water and gave it to Hagar, putting them on her shoulder, and gave her the boy and sent her away. And she departed and wandered about in the wilderness of Beersheba. When the water in the skin was used up, she left the boy under one of the bushes. Then she went and sat down opposite him, about a bow shot away. For she said, do not let me see the boy die. And she sat opposite him and lifted up her voice and wept. God heard the lad crying, and the angel of God called to Hagar from heaven and said to her, what is the matter with you, Hagar? Do not fear, for God has heard the voice of the lad where he is. Arise, lift up the lad and hold him by the hand, for I will make a great nation of him. Then God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. And she went and filled the skin with water and gave it to the lad to drink. God was with the lad, and he grew and he lived in the wilderness and became an archer. He lived in the wilderness of Paran, and his mother took a wife for him from the land of Egypt. Lord, I pray that you would bless the reading of your word. Lord, I am more aware of my need for you than anyone. I know how flawed I am and how incapable I am of doing what you've asked of me. But Lord, I'm not depending on me, I'm depending on you. So come, Lord, and have your way. Amen. Have you ever had your world crash down around you? Have you ever had one of those moments when it seemed like at a certain moment you had it all? Life was just wonderful. And in an instant it's gone. In an instant, all of those blessings that you looked at were just seemed to vanish. felt that God blessed you so much. And then a moment later, took it away. You ever felt like Job? The Lord gives, and the Lord takes away. Has God ever made you a promise only to break it? Or at least seemed like he broke it? You ever felt like he broke it? You were given a promise, maybe even seemed like he fulfilled it. He gave it to you with one hand, and it seems like he took it away with the other. As we look at the story I just read, boy, what a beautiful picture of that image. We've all heard of the child of promise, Isaac. But what about the child of the broken promise, Ishmael? That's what I want to look at this morning. In Genesis 21, the son of promise, Isaac, was born to Abraham and Sarah in their old age. Through Isaac, the covenant would come. Ultimately, through Isaac, the Messiah would come. Our Savior would come. He truly was the child of promise, the child that God promised to Abraham and Sarah, the blessed child through whom the covenant will come. But through Abraham and Sarah's disobedience, another son was born. But we often forget that before Isaac, this other son was given the promise. Abraham promised Ishmael these things. You will be my descendant. You will be my heir. You will be my lineage. You know, Hagar was a simple Egyptian servant girl. She landed a good job. Being the maid of a wealthy woman had to have been a good job. It would provide for her needs, sustain her, probably offer her a good future. So God blessed her by allowing her to be the maid of Sarah. The blessings kept coming. That culture was the trend of the day, if you will, if a woman was barren, she could find a surrogate and have her child through that other woman. And Hagar got chosen to be that surrogate. So she conceived, and her son was now going to be the heir of a very wealthy, prominent man. Can you imagine how excited Hagar must have been? The simple Egyptian maid, my son, he's going to be the heir of Abraham, this wealthy man who's prominent and powerful. Hagar was thinking, my future is now secure. It's my retirement. I don't have to worry about growing old now because I have a son who will be the heir. He will be a man of means, and he can take care of me. Not only that, but I will have a great lineage. That was so huge in that culture. They looked to the future far more than we do. I think we live far more in the moment than they did. But the greatest blessing you could give someone in that culture was to say to them, your descendants will be great and numerous. We don't talk like that, do we? We usually don't even really think about that. But Hagar, my lineage is going to be great. Be a mighty nation. It's going to come from me. She wouldn't be a servant for the rest of her life. At least when Abraham died, she would no longer be the servant, but she would be the mother of the heir. What a future. What a hope. Excitement she must have had. Her son is the child of promise. Unfortunately, it wasn't too long before her world came crashing down. And it seemed as if everything that had been offered to her at a moment was taken away. The moment Isaac was conceived, every dream she had was ripped away from her. Security, my hope, my lineage, my future. It's all gone. This was exciting news for Abraham and Sarah, but it was devastating to Hagar. Devastating. I can't imagine what that would have been like for her. It was all gone in an instant. Hagar and Ishmael are out in the cold. But things go from bad to worse pretty quick. When Isaac is being weaned, or after he's been weaned, Abraham decides to throw a party. Celebrate this great occasion. And Sarah noticed Ishmael apparently mocking Isaac. So she told Abraham, get this kid out of here and his mother. I want him gone. He is not going to be my heir. It's my son's stuff. Abraham wasn't real excited about it. This was his son. But the Lord told him, do what Sarah asks. Drive them out. I think we often misunderstand what that meant. That was a death sentence in that day. Your source of provision and protection in that culture was to be part of a family, be part of a clan. It was in that family unit, it was in that group that you had protection, that you had hope, that you had provision. So when Abraham told Hagar, get out, he was giving her a death sentence. Where could she go? Gave her some bread and a skin of water. Said, God be with you. This was a desert climate. These provisions didn't last very long. Soon the water ran out, And apparently Ishmael is starting to get weak. Now Ishmael wasn't a child. We know that Ishmael was 10 years old when Isaac was conceived. So most likely he was 11 years old when Isaac was born. And this happened when Isaac has been weaned. So 3-4 years, I don't know. So he's anywhere from 13 up to possibly 16 years old. So he's a young man, really. But he's getting weak. And Hagar looks at him and she's breaking. Her heart is breaking because she has no more water, nothing else to give him. And she just says, he's going to die, but I can't watch it. So she sits him down under a tree and she goes off by herself where she's not that far away, but to where she can't see him. And she waits for him to die. Now, this isn't the first time that Hagar had been in that situation. Not with her son. But in chapter 16, Sarah was treating Hagar horribly, so Hagar ran off. And she was there in that almost the same situation where she's out of food and out of water. And an angel of the Lord comes to Hagar. And he gives her this promise. Moreover, the angel of the Lord said to her, I will greatly multiply your descendants so that they will be too many to count. God gave her the promise that your son, through your son, I will bless him, and he will be a great nation. And now here she is, waiting for him to die. He's been kicked out of the house. It seems as if Ishmael wasn't the child of promise, but the child of a broken promise. But the exciting news is this. God is a promise keeper. Amen. It only looked like he was the son of a broken promise. He was still the son of a promise. He wasn't the son of promise, but he was the son of a promise. And God gave him a promise, and God was going to fulfill his promise, even though it didn't look like it. And it's at that point that we come to my favorite verse in this whole story. Verse 17. I love it. God heard the lad crying, and the angel of God called to Hagar from heaven and said to her, what's the matter with you? Don't you love that? What's the matter with you? He might have been more friendly in saying it than I was, but Hagar, what's wrong with you? Right? Do not fear, for God has heard the voice of the lad where he is. That verse is so filled with intrigue and mystery and excitement. As I read it, I kept scratching my head thinking, wow, that is just a cool verse. You could spend hours on that verse. First, notice what it says. He heard the boy crying. It doesn't say anything at all about hearing Hagar crying. Her prayers, what did it say? I heard the boy crying. See, Hagar was saved through her son. She is saved through the promise. given to her son. God promised to make him a great nation. In spite of his background, God promised to make him a great nation. God's a promise keeper. From the beginning, Hagar's hope came through the birth of her son. And here her hope came through the birth of her son. Isn't that such a wonderful archetypical image of all of our hope? Our hope, our salvation comes through the birth of the Son. Our hope comes through the birth of the Son. I also love the statement that he heard the lad cry. Have you ever been where Ishmael was? All you could do was cry. Couldn't even pray. No words can come out of your mouth. No words can come through your mind. You just don't know what to say. You're so desperate. Life is so hard. The situation you're in is so horrible. You don't know what to say. You know, I am convinced that sometimes our best prayers are the ones we can't say. Are the ones that come out of our pure, genuine emotion. Raw, sometimes unfiltered, but genuine. Good news is God is a great interpreter of our crying. He can understand our blubbering, even if we can't. He can understand our whimpering, and he can make sense of our sobbing. As I read that story, I was reminded of a familiar verse in most of us, Romans 8. In the same way, the Spirit also helps our weakness. For we do not know how to pray as we should, but the Spirit himself intercedes for us with groanings too deep for words. And he who searches the hearts knows what the mind of the Spirit is, because he intercedes for the saints according to the will of God. Hagar and Ishmael did not know what to say. They were devastated. They were distraught. They were desperate. They felt abandoned by Abraham and Sarah, and they felt abandoned by God. It wasn't Hagar's choice to be the surrogate. She was a pawn in this, and now she was being cast aside. She was promised a future, but now it seems that that future had been taken away from her. But I love the way the verse ends. Do not fear. God has heard the voice of the lad where he is. Isn't that such a beautiful statement? God heard his cry right where he was. Right in his desperation. Right in his brokenness. Right in his anger. His feelings of betrayal. In that moment where he felt like he was going to die, God recognized their plight. He saw their despair. There is no situation that we can find ourselves in where God can't hear you.
Amen.
There is no noise of the world. There's no cry of death, no wailing of despair, or silence that can keep God from hearing our prayers. Wherever you are. Accomplish nothing else this morning. You only hear one thing. Hear this. God hears you wherever you are. And I was reminded, as I read this, of Exodus. The Lord said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people who are in Egypt. And I have given heed to their cry because of their taskmasters. I am aware of their sufferings. And then again, in verse 16, go and gather the elders of Israel together and say to them, the Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, has appeared to me, saying, I am indeed concerned about you and what has been done to you in Egypt. Those beautiful words. Very similar to what he told Ishmael. I see you where you are. I know your situation. I know your struggles. And I am concerned about it. Excuse me. And that's the message for you and I today. Lord sees you where you are. In the midst of whatever struggle you may be facing, God sees you there. And he hears you there. He knows the struggle. And hope and help and salvation are on the way. It may not be today. It may not be tomorrow, but it's coming. Amen. If God has promised it, it's coming. All we need to do is wait, because it is coming. But here is where we often get into trouble. It may not come the way we expect it to come. If I can speak just for myself, I know I've gotten myself in more trouble by my own expectations than by anything else. Because I have been so many times where I have told God, this is how it's going to happen. Right? This is what I expect to happen. And I can almost imagine God. Seriously? Right? But don't we? We expect this is the only way it's going to happen. This is the way it's got to happen. There's no other possible way. Sounds like Hagar, doesn't it? I've been thrown out of this household, and through that was my salvation. And God said, no, it wasn't. You just thought it was. That was never my plan. Your salvation is coming through Abraham because your son's a descendant. Hagar was convinced that the only way God could ever keep his promise was by keeping her connected right there in that family unit. And by her son being the heir of Abraham. And her son being that line. He says, no. I'll make another line. I can still keep my promise and separate you from him. I am not dependent upon you being connected. I will still keep my promise. You will be saved. You, your son, will be the father of many nations, of a great nation. He will be a great man. I will do what I said I will do. Because there are no such thing God's economy as children of broken promises. God made a promise. He'll keep it. Maybe not the way you expect him to, but he will keep it. He will do what he said. Many of you here this morning, you've received a promise from God. At some point in your life, God spoke to you and told you something. And for some of you, maybe you received it or you thought, and it seems like it was taken away. Let me warn you this morning. God will keep that promise. But let God do it his way. Don't get caught up in this idea. There's only one way God can fulfill his word to you. He's not bound by your expectations. He can do what he wants, in the way he wants, and in a way that will surprise you and shock you, but still get it done. Sometimes we miss God because of our own expectations. Not because he didn't do what he said, because we expected it to come in a different way. Jennifer, come.